India has had simultaneous elections from 1951 to 1967. The Modi government wants to go back to one nation, one poll. The opposition fiercely opposed to this. We heard from member of the Ramnath Kovind Committee, Legal Eagle, Harish Salve, and now to present a counter perspective, I'm joined by one of the country's top constitutional experts, Member of Parliament of the Rajya Sabha, Dr. Abhishek Manu Singhvi. Dr. Singhvi, welcome. You know, we'll speak at the intersection of politics, legality and the constitution. India has had one nation, one election. And for most people who are watching at this time, if you were to ask them, they'd say we have just too many elections. These netas are constantly in election mode. It'll be good if you have elections in one go and then you can focus on governing the country for 5 years. Philosophically, why are you and others in the opposition opposed to what the Modi government is trying to do?
Rahul, let me start by saying that this is a particularly appealing concept at first blush, especially to that which I call the drawing room classes and the chattering classes. It appeals to our sense of order, uniformity, discipline, everything neatly, the T's cut and the I's dotted. But, you know, it is completely unreal. People don't realize the operational reality. First and foremost, it does not take into account the fact that the heart of the proposal is to basically press a reset button the first time you have a midterm election. And you make this election, suppose today is the midterm election, you push it to the next 2.5 years away, reset button. That's the heart of it. Now, at this heart lies an attempt to impose a legal will on the will of the majority. The majority has elected you, you have fallen, you are again re-elected, but only for 2.5 years, or only for 1 year. Suppose the government falls after 4 years. This law says that you will be elected again for 1 year.
Harish Salve called it a one-time pain for a much larger national gain.
Right. So let me answer that. You're absolutely right. It's nice to put it like a one-time. By the way, that one-time reset button will probably start operating only from 2034. What happens, Rahul, after 2034, assuming it starts? Yes, you'll feel nice for one-time reset button. Have you taken into account the fickle loyalties based on the quicksand of politics of the various MLAs and MPs? Have you seen the remarkable jugaad of the anti-defection 10th schedule law? By the way, the principal culprit in that has been in many states the ruling party. And will you, when you have reset it, I'm assuming that you reset it in 2034, I'm just giving an example.
Why do you keep saying 34? The government wants to start from 29.
Okay, very well. 29, no. 29 is the date when the reset button is pushed. The first time it will activate is when the government falls after 29. So if it falls after 29, let us say in 2031, the reset button takes it to 2034. So you will have that resync. But the point is, if you have, this is what happened in a natural course from 1951 to 1967. But you didn't try to, you know, what is democracy about, Rahul? It is a lot to do with the spontaneity, the uncertainty, the volatility, the chaos and the freedom of democracy. You can't expect an ordered, legally ordered, ideal world in that saying. What will you do in 10 states today? And do you know, Rahul, today more part of India and more population of India is ruled by regional parties than by the 2 or 3 national parties. You are actually affecting their autonomy, their independence. The idea is that you are imposing a uniformity of national issues on these state level issues. It's a far more, deep concept which you are attacking. And I think it's ill thought of because it assumes that there'll be a couple of governments once or twice falling. If you start having changing loyalties, changing 10 schedule movements, more and more government fallings, how many times will you violate the will? You are elected again, but you're elected only for 2.5 years. Why will the MP accept it? Why will the MLA accept it? And I will also tell you one more thing. The challenge will be severe on constitutional ground. I'm not talking politics, I'm talking law. Because you are substituting a legal mandate upon the will of the people, you will be facing a challenge based on level playing field, anti-democratic, an attempt to not make elections free and fair because the will of the people is reduced to 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, as the case may be, and therefore impinging ultimately in that challenge on basic structure.
Okay, can I pause you? You've spoken a lot. Let's unpack this one at a time. You said it will lead to excessive centralism, and we heard this argument in Parliament that the central government stands to benefit. Harish Salve countered this by saying that that is a vote of no confidence that the opposition is expressing in the intelligence of the Indian voter. As recently as in the Maharashtra Assembly elections, when the Assembly election to Nanded was held, the Mahayuti won. In the same election on the same day when the Lok Sabha poll was held in Nanded, the Mahavikas Aghadi won. We saw it as recently as just the 23rd of November.
That example, unfortunately, is highly misplaced, inapposite. You are now not talking of a non-synchronized system where an individual election at the MP level gives a different result from the assembly election. You are now talking of a monotonously monitored, synchronized, ordained system of cycle by which all elections, indeed, don't forget, the proposal includes municipal and lower elections, all will happen together. In that system, you are trying to impose national issues upon local issues. And you are, in fact, trying to impose state-level issues on municipal issues. It will not happen immediately, but shortly after the synchronized system, you will find that there is an attempt to overwhelm. And there is an attempt not to allow, with the cacophony of media, with the cacophony of campaigning. And what is all this for, Rahul? You are again given this very drawing room sense that you will save huge amounts of money. Has anybody done a calculation? Have you come up with a figure? Let me tell you 2 or 3 things very briefly. One, elections generate economic activity, commerce, taxes. But more than that, if you were to increase EVMs, if you spent 1/20th the money you are spending today for all this synchronization and all, you increase EVMs, why don't you reduce the tenure of elections to a 4-week cycle at the most instead of 7 weeks that you have now? Do you know how much extra money you spend from 4 to 7 weeks?
So, the committee did do a calculation. Their argument is it will lead to an additional 1% growth in the GDP rates. The rate at which the economy grows will go up by 1% according to the findings and the calculations of the Ramnath Kovind committee.
Let me tell you that there has been absolutely no scientific basis of that calculation. None. It's not been shared in the way you are saying. It's just a conclusion. How do you say that GDP will increase 1%? The election is the same. The size is the same. Please don't think that you're reducing elections. You're having 3 levels of election ultimately from 2034 or 2039. 3 sets of elections, but around the same week. The number of elections, the number of people who go, the number of personnel, the number of polling booths is not going to change much. Actually, the only slightly valid point about it is that you will have a reduction in the MCC periods. That is no doubt true. But then that cost is something which is far outweighed by the festival of democracy, which means independence of electors to elect terms which are not preordained, cut by law.
Can I get you to respond to Harish Salve's charge that the opposition, by saying that having the central and state assembly elections at the same time is an affront, is a no confidence vote in the intelligence of the Indian voter? That you're expressing no confidence in the intelligence of the Indian voter by saying just because he votes on the same day, he'll vote for the Lok Sabha and in the assembly in the same fashion.
Not in the least. It is a charge that the government is trying to over-influence that will of the people. After all, in electoral democracy, of course, publicity campaigns, movements during elections do influence outcomes. That doesn't mean you're insulting the intelligence of the person. You are now talking of a regular cycle when the parliamentary issues will happen with the state issues, will happen with the municipal issues. Nobody is saying that the intelligence of the voter, but we are talking of the attempt of the government to say that you must have these mixed set of issues in the same week. Over time, when you have a synchronized set of elections, of course it is going to overwhelm local issues. Of course there is going to be misinformation, miscampaigning. Does that happen now? When you do a campaigning trying to divert attention on national issues when the local issues should be mattering, and when you start doing state issues when the panchayat issues should be mattering, is that an insult to the intelligence of the people? No, it's an attempt by the government to do it. What the people will do, we'll have to see.
Let's come now to the basic structure argument that the opposition is making. Arjun Meghwal, the law minister, says this is not violative of the basic structure doctrine because principles like judicial review, the federal character of the constitution, separation of powers, secular character, supremacy of constitution are not changed. Hari Salve said this is just a catchy, buzzing catchphrase that the opposition has caught on to without being able to explain how this actually violates the federal structure and the basic doctrine.
Okay, so let's tell you where the catchphrase is. The catchphrase is ONOE. That's the jumla, not the basic structure. First of all, that is this government has a control freak approach. It wants uniformity upon diversity in everything, in dress, habit, speech, food, everything. One language, one nation, one religion, one nation. God forbid, one party, one nation. That's the general point. The second point is that way back in 1975, the judgment known as Indira Nehru Gandhi said, level playing field and electoral democracy is part of the basic structure. You tell me, in case the people elect you for a 5-year term, or you are an MP who is not a mandate in a full national election or assembly election, why should your term be curtailed to 2.5 years? On what basis? And the next man's term next to you will be curtailed to 1 year. Is that not a superimposition of law upon the will of the people? Number 3, that is what a level playing field is spoiled. That is what the Indira Nehru Gandhi said, the judgment Rajnarayan versus that free and fair elections, the mandate of the people, level playing field, all coalesce in democracy, which is part of the basic structure. So it clearly directly links. And judicial review has nothing to do with it. Of course, the judges will review it. The point is, it's your attempt. Ultimately, what the judges decide will be when the challenges are mounted. But don't think challenges will not be mounted.
The other big argument is about whether this can be passed just as a constitutional amendment in Parliament, or does it need the ratification of more than half the state assemblies? Arjun Meghwal in Parliament argues that Schedule 7 of the Union List, Entry 72, empowers Parliament to legislate in elections to both the Parliament and state legislature without this requiring the ratification of the state assembly, which is the argument Harish Salve made as well. The opposition seems to believe that it requires the approval of half the state assemblies, and that is really at the core of how this bill will get passed, if at all it does.
Well, I'm quite happy if the Honorable Law Minister and those who are advising him on law adopt the approach you are saying, because I think he'll be struck down in a jiffy. And I don't want to exaggerate. Just tell me in commonsensical terms, Rahul, are you changing the term of state assemblies, MLAs? Are you changing the character of state elections and further the part 19 panchayati and municipal elections? What is the answer, Rahul? Yes?
Sure, yeah.
Now you are changing the character at that level and you are saying you don't need an amendment at the consent of states? I don't know who is the advisor and what law they are following. My first principle of law tell me that that is going to be the first challenge and it's going to be allowed for the asking, subject to, of course, the court taking a decision. How can you even suggest that you are directly affecting states' autonomy, state elections, municipal elections, panchayati raj elections, or other forms of non-parliamentary elections, and not even seeking a state consent en masse for all the states? And that is the difficult question which the government doesn't want to answer.
No, but that's the position that the Ramnath Kovind committee took. We had former President Ramnath Kovind, who's also the chairman of the committee, with us at Agenda Aaj Tak. I had a lengthy conversation with him about it. In the collective view of that committee, which had the likes of Harish Salve and many others in it, they've come to the view, and they consulted with the current election commission as well, they've come to the view that it does not require the ratification of state assemblies.
Well, I thank God that the committee is not the Supreme Court. Thank God they're not even the High Court. Any constitutional court with any power will tell you the correct law and, if I may say so with deep respect, educate the errors of the committee. The committee is a view, it's a proposal.
Sure.
Please don't give it any legal status or any hierarchy. You tell me your logic. How do you propose a law which directly touches upon the heart of electoral democracy at second and third tier, forget the first tier, And you don't even ask the states. Does it stand to common sense?
No, but for panchayat elections, they will consult the state assemblies, which is why that's not taken up in phase one.
So that itself, you're right. That itself is an acceptance of the point I'm saying. If you'll do it for panchayat, Rahul tell you why you would do it for state elections?
No, that's a very complex argument which really needs to be hammered out between the likes of you, Harish Salve, and the others in court.
The argument is, of course, it will go to court. Argument is based on a misreading of 71 and 72. How can 71 and 72 tell you what the amending article tells you clearly, that things affecting the states must go to the states? That is the whole object of the article. Unless you can establish before the court that this does not affect state level issues. It is directly dealing with state elections. What more is there democracy at the state level elections than this? I find it absurd. But the problem is, you want to pass it in a hurry. You don't want to take a chance. A lot of your own allies will oppose it. Let me tell you, if you take it to the states, you are scared a lot of your own allies will oppose you. So you find this expedient कि हम पार्लियामेंट में पास कर लेंगे, बाद में देखी जाएगी क्या होता है. एक बार तो हमने अपना, see, the point is you pre-decide. It's a favorite theme of someone, numero uno. So the favorite theme of someone has to be implemented. What has happened in this committee? This committee was not, if you see the terms of reference, sure, it is not to tell you whether it is desirable, necessary, good. It is to say, we have decided ONOE. You tell us how. There is no if question there. It's a how question.
But the government has now sent this to a JPC, where the likes of you and others can argue once the JPC has actually been formed, and then the bill can be amended based on the feedback that the members of the Joint Parliamentary Committee give.
We hope and trust what you are saying is true, but I have very little hopes. The JPC, as you know, is based on majoritarian rule. Here is a decision of no less than numero uno. That decision can't be diluted or changed. And what you are doing today is the entire exercise in the whole country, through committees, through bodies which are stamping legitimacy on a preconceived idea. They're not telling you that it's desirable on its own merits. They're telling you how to do it because it has been decided by someone else for them. That's the crux of the problem, which is why you're making blunders like saying states' rights are not affected, so don't go for state amendments. Constitutional amendments through state consent.
Well, our viewers have heard from Dr. Singhvi. Before that, they heard from Harish Salve. We leave it for the moment for our viewers to play judge and decide who they thought had the more compelling argument, and ultimately the Supreme Court judges will have to decide which of the two arguments holds greater weight. Abhishek Singhvi, for joining us and sharing your insights. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.